Thank you very much for joining us today. I just had the most lovely conversation with Taoiseach Martin, who has traveled a great distance to come to our city for United Nations Week, but he made a stop here to visit me here in our offices, in the New York Governor's office, and I was very delighted to get to know him, even though he's a Cork man and I come from Kerry in a sense, and there's a little bit of rivalry when it comes to Gaelic football, but for purposes of today, we're on the same team.
Absolutely.
And we had a great opportunity to talk about issues that unite us, the long history of relations between Ireland and the state of New York, including my own grandparents who left there and left great poverty and found their way to Chicago and ultimately New York State. And as a result, I'm here. And I want to thank you for extending your hand in friendship and the relationships that we've had pre-existing, but that'll even deepen with our knowledge of each other's great history. And I have such admiration for the people of Ireland, and to have you as a leader is really significant to all of us. So if you want to say a few words, I'd like to welcome you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Governor, and delighted to meet with you this afternoon. And as I said to Kathy, I think your story, the story of your grandparents, their journey from Castle Gregory to the US, very tough times, is a story of resilience, of perseverance, and it illustrates the enduring connectivity between our two nations. And it's a fabulous story of progress, of meritocracy, of people really working to get on in life. And we are very proud that an outcome of that journey has been the first woman governor of New York. A Kerry woman, if you don't mind me saying that. And I think many people in Ireland were thrilled and delighted when they heard that news. And I think it reflects that enduring relationship between us. And I enjoyed the conversation we had earlier. We compared notes in relation to COVID-19. And of course, we were very worried and concerned in terms of the impact of Storm Ida. And again, it illustrates the issue of climate change and how central that is to our lives now. And this week at the UN Security Council, Ireland has been approaching that issue for quite some time now, getting the issue of climate and security on the UN agenda. And it's been a consistent theme of ours, and in many ways, Storm Ida again reinforces the centrality of climate to our political agenda and the need for nations to take decisions in relation to that. We're also delighted to see that shortly the travel ban will lift, which I think will give a fillip to Europe, to Ireland and the US relationship. Connectivity is everything, and it's the lifeblood of our relationship, and I think it reflects the progress we are making in respect of COVID-19.
Thank you. We miss the tourists. We want the tourists to come back. We're looking forward to finding out more details on the lifting of that ban, but I have a feeling that the streets of New York will feel much more vibrant again when we have our international visitors coming here, people who've been vaccinated, which is important to us. And they'll find when they come to New York City, we have certainly right now among the lowest infection rates in the entire nation. We're averaging about 2%, a little bit lower from Manhattan. So that's the message to get out to global travelers who have not made the journey in a very long time because of the pandemic, that we are open for business here in the state of New York, and there's fabulous Broadway plays and shows and concerts, and the museums and all the great attractions are here, and we cannot wait to have more visitors. But to welcome you, I wanted to present a gift. I know you're a fan of Gaelic football. My grandparents were actually co-founders of the North American Gaelic Athletic Association, and my grandfather and father played Gaelic football. And my father was a very good player, ball player, as we say. And this is a New York City team that you need to see this. This is for you. Just want to hold up your jersey, and I'll show you mine. This is sent to me from Ireland.
I think I recognize that one.
All right. This is my, so we have our shirts.
It was very diplomatic of you, Kathy, to give me this one.
No offense to my friends in County Cork.
That's fabulous.
But that's our New York City team. We're very proud of that. And
I was explaining to the Governor earlier that the president of the Gaelic Athletic Association back in Ireland is based in New York, Larry McCarthy, and he did great work here for the GA in New York, and was elected by his peers in Ireland to lead the association for the next number of years.
My grandfather was one of the founders of the North American GAA, and again, as I said, our family, my father was a great athlete, and he was scheduled to go play in Ireland as part of the American team. And the week he was supposed to go, his daughter Kathleen was born, so he decided it would be better to stay home and be there for the birth of me instead of playing in Ireland. So he missed that opportunity, but I hear about it all the time.
He probably reminded you all the time.
That's right. And this is a book of the history of the North American GAA. So
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you indeed. And it's our little gift, which is a book also, but it's a book containing a poem by our foremost woman poet of the century, Evan Boland.
Oh, yes,
now, this was commissioned by our ambassador to the United Nations, celebrating, commemorating 100 years of women's suffrage in Ireland. Women got to vote in Ireland in 1918, and Evan was commissioned to write a poem celebrating that. And it's illustrated by another Irish artist, Paula McGinn. And so it's a beautiful publication.
Boy, I will treasure this. Thank you. 1918?
1918, yeah. Universal
1917 in New York, but America 1920. So you're right in the middle of our two. But thank you so much. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Governor, the US actually asked foreign leaders not to come this week for high-level week at the UN for fear that it would be some sort of super spreader event. Are you concerned at all that a lot of foreign leaders have come and there are big delegations in town for the week?
It is our sincere hope that these individuals are vaccinated, and if you ever want to frequent any of our places in New York City, for example, go to a restaurant, they'll be required to show that they have proof of vaccination. So we feel comfortable with the protocols and that we have in place in the city of New York to make sure that our residents are protected.
And Mr. Martin, just on the travel ban, I know you welcome the lifting of it. Have you any insight as to why now? What are your European colleagues telling you? Mr. Biden had resisted doing this all year. Now all of a sudden it's being lifted. Do you know what the final change was, and what is your general reaction to today's news?
Well, I think first of all I welcome the news, because I think connectivity is everything. I think it reflects the progress that we've all collectively made on the vaccination front. I mean, when you look at the Irish story, we're 90% vaccinated over 16-year-olds now, more or less. And right across Europe and in the US, vaccination rates have gone up significantly. We do know the vaccines protect against severe illness, hospitalization, ICU admission. So the timing, I imagine from the American government's perspective, is about right. And like ourselves, the gradual phased return to normal activity is the best way to go. And there's only a matter of a month or 6 weeks between us in terms of various aspects of our society that we've reopened. In Ireland, we've been criticised at times for not reopening more quickly, but we feel since the springtime we've got it about right in terms of a gradual phased reopening. The economy is bouncing back. We know that travel, aviation, tourism are the areas that have suffered the most, and their time has come now to be given an opportunity in terms of this reopening.
Governor, how concerned are you about an influx of travelers as a result of the decision to lift the restrictions, especially in the colder months when there could be a resurgence of the virus when people are indoors?
No one can travel to this country without proof of vaccination. We know that vaccinations work, and we'll be looking very closely at the idea of booster shots as well. And I know in Europe they have a different philosophy on boosters. We're following what the CDC is recommending. Right now we're going to be having them over 65, but right now we believe that the vaccines are working. There's a direct correlation between high vaccination rates and low infection rates everywhere. And that's what we're banking on, is that they ought to be strictly enforced to make sure that all travelers have proof of vaccination.
Taoiseach, Ireland is under pressure to sign up to the OECD deal on international tax that would see it bring to at least a minimum 15% rate. You're involved in Enterprise Ireland, IDA Ireland business this week. Will you be giving a commitment to US companies that you meet that Ireland will commit to retaining the 12.5% rate? And to the Governor, obviously the tax rate in Ireland is much lower than New York. I understand it's a combined federal and state tax rate of about 26% for corporations. Do you regard Ireland as a tax haven that is taking jobs and investment away from states like yours?
Well, if I first of all could say that it's a two-way trade in terms of, first of all, American companies have made a substantial and huge contribution to the modern Irish economy over the last 50 years. But we also would say that the Irish location has been a solution and has contributed to the global activities of such companies. But equally, Irish companies in America have created about 90,000 jobs in America. And that's why I'm meeting Enterprise Ireland, which is the state agency that supports Irish companies who go abroad. And the IDA companies who've come into Ireland from overseas in America have created about 120,000, 130,000 jobs. So the importance is, from our perspective though, because we believe in multilateral free market approach. We export a lot as a country, so we want Irish companies coming to America and vice versa. In terms of the tax issue, we are part of the OECD process. It's not completed yet, and we have issues with some of the text and where the agreement is at this stage. But there's further discussions underway, and I've had meetings during the week with Pascal Donoghue, with the other party leaders, and the next 6 weeks will be important in terms of bringing those discussions to a conclusion. But Ireland, for the last decade, have been part of the OECD BEPS process. We've played a very constructive role in relation to that. Our taxation is utterly transparent and very clear. The issues that we would be insisting on is certainty and continuity in tax frameworks, so that companies know the landscape over a reasonable period of time. And those are the objectives that we're looking at in the context of the OECD process.
Will you be committing to keeping the 12.5% rate when you're talking?
But as I said, I'm not going to be making commitments one way or the other to any individual companies. We did go to public consultation, so we have got feedback from companies in respect of where they want Ireland to land, if you like, in terms of this issue. And there's a bit of travel to go yet. We're engaged in the process. We're going to continue to engage constructively.
On the tax question,
The tax
yes, I recall the question. Independent of a company's calculation as to their tax advantages or disadvantages, you'll see a tremendous synergy between American companies and places like Dublin, where companies like Apple and Google and Facebook, companies that are in New York State, but also have their European headquarters in Ireland. So each company will make their own decision. Obviously, we're welcoming all businesses to New York, but we also know that we benefit from a synergistic relationship with companies that are Irish and also American companies working together. The bottom line is that any way we can create jobs, you've got my attention.
Just on the issue of welcoming Irish tourists and international tourists back to New York, would you be hopeful that the younger population in Ireland who avail of the J1 visa in the summertime would be able to apply to come back to New York, perhaps work in some of the areas like New York City, Montauk, and upper New York State? A lot of them come over for the summer to obviously enjoy themselves.
Yes, they do.
Work, or would you like to see that come back next year?
Absolutely, I would like to see that. These young individuals from Ireland, you hear the brogues in many of our famous resorts, all the way from Chautauqua Institution on the shores over in Jamestown, New York, all the way to, as you mentioned, Montauk, and it's delightful. We want them to have a good experience. It's part of growing up. I spent time in Ireland and London as a young person, as a student, so and I'm a better person for having that international experience. Similarly, we want to make sure that there's that flow of individuals who will see America, have an understanding of it before they return to their home or decide what their future will bring. I feel it's really discouraging to me that under the Trump administration, there was such a suppression of any individuals coming here, the limitation on visas, the basically shutting the doors to refugees, and it was basically the refugee population, immigrant population, that brought back the population of Ireland and helped bring back the population of places like New York and even as far as Buffalo, where the population went up in the last census only because of the influx of people from Burma and Somalia and Thailand. We need to get back to that place where people feel welcome to come here, and in addition to just being part of our heritage as the place with the Lady Liberty and the harbor that welcomes people, it's also good for our economy. I need to get people in more jobs, particularly in healthcare. And I mentioned this, if there's any nurses who want to come over to the state of New York, we'll try to pave the way with getting through the visas. I'll be having this conversation even higher up this afternoon.
Okay, we only have time we're out of time, so let's just do one off topic, Governor.
Zach?
Governor, if I could, I just want to get your reaction to the resignation of the Inspector General. You have made a point of saying you want to overhaul JACO, the Trouble and Ethics Agency. But what about the Inspector General's office? It does seem as though that was maybe misused over the last several years, and if you had any plans to kind of reform or change how that's done.
We'll be changing personnel in all these offices, and I know everyone understands I need a little bit of time, because in order to get the right people in, I have to sometimes bring up subordinates to fill vacant roles while we do proper vetting. And I want to get the vetting right to make sure that no one has any issues that'll come back later and make us regret a decision. So I've asked for that time. People have understood we need more time to build this. But also, yes, the whole premise behind who appoints the members, who appoints an inspector general, all those are questions on the table as I'm really rethinking how we conduct ethics investigations and internal investigations in our state government. And I believe there needs to be more independence than there has been historically. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you coming out.
One more. On your announcement today across town about the two energy lines, could you elaborate on costs at all in terms of how much will these two lines cost to bring energy from upstate and Canada to the city? How much will ratepayers pay? How much will the energy cost? Can you elaborate on that in terms of?
We can get you all those details, but this was part of a commitment from the city of New York to make sure that we can start weaning New York City, but also hard-hit neighborhoods from the dirty fossil fuel plants that are now pervasive in many communities of color. That's not sustainable, and whether it's the children who have unsustainably high asthma rates, there's a lot of illness related to this, and we need to change that. But you can't just shut it down without having an alternative energy source.
Right.
So we took a bold action. People expected us to consider reviews of applications that come in from various sources to select one or the other. I said, we're in a crisis situation. I'm saying we select two options. Just give me the two best options. One is a 374-mile transmission line that'll provide hydroelectric power from Hydro-Quebec. I've asked that they go along existing transmission lines so it has the minimal disruption to the environment, and also to co-locate, which is unheard of, but I'm going to pursue co-location on existing lines, as well as underground. In addition to that project, which should be completed around 2025, which is great, we have a project that will be completed in 2027, which will bring in wind and solar power in from Delaware County, about 150-mile line. I have to get the exact number on how far it is. That'll also support New York City as we start to wean New York City from dirty fossil fuels. This will take substantial private investment. These are not approved until the Public Service Commission approves them, and that's where it's on, but I'm weighing in heavily in terms of my hope and my expectations. And my goal is to have ratepayers not pay more, but to the extent that large companies upstate have to bear some of the costs of the short-term costs, I'm willing to look at some tax policies that'll lighten the burden, because all of us have to make sure that we're on the same page heading into a very different energy future than the one that we have now, or the one that I grew up in, a very polluted area, Lackawanna, New York, when I saw before my eyes, the pollution of one of our greatest freshwater lakes, Lake Erie, as well as the contaminants that were so pervasive in the sky you couldn't see the sunset because of the orange clouds of smoke. That's the world I grew up in. That's the world I refuse to entertain. It has to be part of our history, a bad history. But going forward, never again, I say. And these transmission lines I announced today, major part of our history, major part of our future going forward. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.